and welcome to DawnNews English. I'm Nadia Naqi with you with 20 minutes. Today we're going to be discussing the much awaited and much in focus on the political landscape. That's the transition of command at the GHQ. Today it happened. General Asim Munir, the new Chief of Army Staff, is now in place. And from here, a new era begins, I'd say. Why I say this is because a lot has been said by the outgoing Army Chief. That's General Bajwa. Before, passing on to this transition, he had mentioned that the institution has decided to remain apolitical. That is also saying that, the much criticism done on the institution has been because of the involvement of the institution in the politics of the country. However, what is expected, what can we hope now from here onwards for the next 3 years is what we're going to be discussing in 20 minutes with none other than Lieutenant General Retired Amjad Shuaib Saab. Thank you so much for joining us in 20 minutes. General Staff, to start with, what are your opening remarks regarding what do you hope and expect out of this change now or the transition that has been completed?
Nadia, first of all, I would like to welcome General Asim Munir. I know him for some time, and I remember that he's a very, good officer who has been groomed properly for high command. He has been holding some of the very sensitive appointments in the army, and He has also commanded the corps, enjoys a very good reputation. First of all, these parties in PDM, they have been blaming for their intervention and also their rigging or they say the management of the elections of 2018. And subsequently, the army kept on receiving a lot of flack from Mariam Nawaz and also from Nawaz Sharif. And they have been naming General Bajwa. Mm-hmm. So at that time, it was very demoralizing because a very prominent party was targeting the army and the high command. And the moment we saw this regime change, thereafter the entire country, I think the 70 to 80% people of the Pakistan, they started targeting the army, the high command, etc. So I think the army in the process has lost a lot of confidence of our people. And now General Asim will have to make very, very serious efforts to bridge this gap of understanding between the people and the army.
Why do you feel General Asim is going to be involved in the economic challenges that the country faces when the institution is now going to be working within the parameters of the constitution that allows it to, the role that the constitution probably empowers the institution, not more than that?
Nadia, there are two areas where the army can chip in without indulging any politics.
Okay.
If you recall, General Bajwa has been running around to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, and to
China,
various other friendly countries to get some financial help and also to get assistance for the economy. And this was a military diplomacy which definitely worked well, and perhaps we could not draw maximum benefit out of his efforts, but he was there running around and trying to help the government. A similar effort can be initiated again, and that effort, I think, should be directed by the economists, by those people who are going to manage the economy, and they should give directions to the Chief of the Army Staff that this is where they want to have his help or his assistance to manage the international affairs. See, there is one very important aspect which one has to manage, one has to understand is that in various countries, in certain countries, military to military relationship is stronger than the political relationship of the two governments. Because of our participation in the building of their defense, building up of their military, for example, in Qatar, the entire forces, Qatar defense forces were created by Pakistan, I would say. We were the ones who raised their forces and trained them, wrote their orders, and also created the laws and everything they needed. And we enjoyed a lot of respect in that country. And that is why for the defense of this World Cup, which they are holding now, for the security of this event, they had requested Pakistan, and General Bajwa was the main force behind it. They had promised that they would employ something like 200,000 people from Pakistan. We couldn't fulfill the requirement, but they were open. So I think that is one. Secondly, I think the Chief of Army Staff can use his good offices to bring these politicians together, at least on one point agenda, and that is the economy.
But Janat Sahab, I'm so sorry to interrupt you here again. Why do you expect it, and why should anyone accept the institution to step in, as a mediator between these political parties? Now, this is one thing that do you really expect General Asim to be carrying on this legacy?
No, I think we have to differentiate. There is an active participation in politics. Then there is a no confidence motion. You start managing and you start bringing in people to make sure that there is no confidence motion doesn't succeed. There are types of interventions in politics.
Managing the elections, managing political parties, getting the allied
and together. Managing no confidence motion even. I think we should admit that we had a role in that. So I think this will be a very serious thing if we start doing the same thing. But helping the government where they can tackle a particular problem, that I think should not be considered as an intervention. And the other thing is that the Chief of the Army Staff should look around, and those people who are thought to be very close to General Bajwa, etc., there has to be a change of the face of the institution. They have to change the various leaders who are sitting on various appointments, because unless you change the team, it will be very difficult to convey an impression to the people that you are not following the same policies which were being followed previously.
There has been a lot of discussion around yes, the reputation of the institution has been tarnished in the public for various reasons by all political parties. It was Nawaz Sharif raising questions at the Gujranwala Jalsa, and then after the vote of no confidence, we see that Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister, has really attacked the institution by taking names and names that were probably not used earlier as examples for the institutions. We do remember the maximum we could go on in a public space discussing the institution would be Khalai Makhlook, probably. That was a new term. And after that, the neutral, the Janwar, Mir Sadiq, Mir Jafar, God knows what, Chaukidars, right? So coming back to this, do you think that there was a division within the institution also as discussed? And this division was based on the likings of those in the institution for different political party leadership?
See, first of all, I would say it was too bad to call Mir Jafar and Mir Sadiq. It hurts the ego of a person who is sacrificing his life, who is sacrificing all his efforts for the betterment of the country. So there can be differences, but you should not call such like things unless you have some very serious proof. On the other hand, these things perhaps could have been called for Nawaz Sharif, who has been really hitting us down the belt, below the belt. He was a person who said that why we sent those people to Pathankot to kill the Indians, to Bombay, to kill the Indians where they had gone and killed 160. And that was the statement which was quoted in the International Court of Justice by the Indian lawyer. Similar to the case of Kulbhushan. I mean, he has been really behaving like Amir Sadiq and Mir Jafar. But then you are calling the Chief of the Army Staff. I think that will not be acceptable. So the institution reacted. The failure of the institution was that on one hand, when people sitting in PDM, they were shouting in their jalsas that ye jo dahshatgardi hai, iske piche vardi hai, and we didn't say a word about it. And when the PTI people started saying something, we reacted very violently. That is where I think the people started realizing that we are not very fair to the situation, and I think we are handling it in a very partial manner, in a very, I would say, we have a leaning towards the particular group. So that was one. Similarly, there is a lot of saying that, Imran Khan had accused that the corruption cases could not move because the military was influencing. I think I don't have any proof for that, but this is what he has been saying. So people
yes, that the NAB was under the establishment. That's what he says.
Maybe people are believing his word, and maybe people are inclined towards that. And this way, I would say, it's a very, very serious matter. The country has suffered a lot because of corruption, and if anybody from the army has been influencing NAB to make sure that these people are let off, I think this is a very, very serious allegation, more than anything else. And if this is true, then he will be justified in saying Mir Jafar and Mir Sadiq. So that way, I think these things are interlinked, and General Asim Munir should address these issues. He should find out, and then he should try to remove the. I have a feeling that this will not be true, as Imran is alleging. But at the same time, it will be very important that Asim Munir should carry out some kind of investigation.
And Nawaz Sharif said the same thing, General Saab. Would you say the same, that the institution must find out whether these allegations are serious and they hold any evidence? Or would you just be saying that Nawaz Sharif is in the habit of attacking the institutions or creating a logjam with the institution as always?
See, there are two aspects of this thing. Nawaz Sharif has never been able to pick up the right choice. This is the first time that they have picked up the senior-most person. And
really?
even in this choice, they have made it a bit controversial. Because there were 2 days when he was to retire, and he could have been very conveniently, without creating any controversy, he could have been posted as Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, because Joint Chief was retiring on 25th. But when you got focused on a person, and particularly when Maryam Nawaz has also been indicating her choice that Asim Munir is the choice. So that way, I think unnecessarily you create a controversy where a man otherwise was competent and he was senior enough to hold a 4-star position. He was competent and he was senior most, so he could have gone there. But you have brought him that those 2 days jugglery will create a doubt about it.
Okay.
But on the other hand, when General Bajwa was appointed or any other was appointed, the senior most competent people, even when General Musharraf was appointed, senior most competent people were ignored by Nawaz Sharif because of the political considerations. And when you appoint somebody out of the way, then you have then you attach expectations to them. And when they do not fulfill your expectations, you start having conflict with them.
I absolutely agree to what you're saying, that, if you are superseded and you are made a chief out of turn, naturally you want some kind of political expectation for a lot of stuff when you're in government. What about former Prime Minister Imran Khan? He did not choose General Bajwa to start with, but he did give him an extension, right? And Imran Khan just turned rogue towards him when the institution decided not to probably help him out on that same page as used to be the case previously in his earlier days as Prime Minister.
Talking specifically to this issue, I would say that first of all, the institution offered itself to provide extra services to Imran Khan. Why did they do that? And then if the person develops a habit for 3.5 years, that whatever he wants, you start doing for him. And ultimately a point comes and you say that we can't do this. And then he's disappointed and he starts misbehaving. So I think right from the beginning, the institution was not in I would say they were not following the right line.
Right.
They became controversial right from the beginning, right from the first day, if you recall. When people were to go to the National Assembly to take their votes, at that time, that was the first day. And that was the day when all of them, these PDM leaders, they got together and Maulana Fazl Rahman was insisting that nobody should go for the oath. He said, I don't believe in this assembly. So right from the first day, this whole setup was disputed because the army's conduct was not. Even at that time, I used to say that please stay away from this election. For me, the institution is more important. Let the civil authorities manage their election. They must have their own mechanism. They must have their own forces available for them.
So, General sir, one thing I'd like to ask you, whatever has been done within the institution, also there is a division. There is a repair, a course correction that is required. But the institution always protects, people who belong to the institution. I mean, we've seen that in case of General Musharraf also. Nobody can touch General Musharraf. And we knew how he was, taken out of this country also. Will the same happen for General Bajwa?
See, this is something we perhaps have not been able to manage well. The institution feels that perhaps there is a kind of loyalty, mutual loyalty, which they have to maintain. Otherwise, I would say what General Musharraf did towards the end of his tenure, the NRO, the famous NRO, I think that was a criminal act which he committed. That was the beginning of everything, and thereafter, all these cases of corruption, even in case of MQM, the cases of murder, etc., were they were taken out, and ultimately there was no evidence. Whatever investigations had gone in, those papers were withdrawn and ultimately destroyed by the concerned people. And we could, even when this NRO was declared illegal, we could not pursue those cases. So this was the fiasco which was created by General Musharraf. He was a friend of mine. I never supported, I always opposed. General Bajwa will have to face this thing. I think the institution perhaps will not allow the long hand to get after it.
So what in your opinion, you said General Musharraf's biggest mistake and why you have now become a critique of him is that he gave NRO. What about General Bajwa? What is his biggest mistake in your opinion?
See, I can tell you that General Bajwa was in power, and many people, they never spoke anything about it. And now, it always happens in our society. Now that he has left the office, I think things will start coming out. And if he hasn't done anything, and if his hands are clean, then in that case, I think there'll be no problem.
What about Azam Swati? What about Ali Wazir? What about Mohsin Dawar? What about the missing persons? Do we see that once the institution has decided to go apolitical, a lot of other problems associated with the institution shall also vanish? And there shall be a course correction on these aspects, just to name a few.
See, there is, for example, this issue of missing person. This is not wholly connected with the institution. There are many other reasons when we see these people missing from there. And there are people who want to avoid the law, and then in order to save their skin, they have disappeared here and there. And there are certain people who are now, who will be imprisoned in the private jails of these Sardars. See, I've been GOC in Quetta. I know that these people, they get hold of somebody and then they put him in the private jail, and it is announced that so-and-so person is missing.
Okay.
So there may be few, but I would say the institution should now come clean. They should try to find out the reality, and ultimately anybody who is missing and still there in the custody of the institution, that should be, I think, now things are changing, and they should hand it over to the civil authority or whatever is to be done. Everything should be done legally, according to the law.
All right.
So
and same goes for Ali Wazir, same goes for Mohsin Dawar.
See, this is very unfortunate that the institution has not been able to do anything about them, in spite of the fact that, if you recall, Asif Ghafoor, when he was the DGISPR, he had said that they have been getting money from abroad. And this must be true, because when we had the Ashraf Ghani government in Afghanistan, at that time they were thriving. They used to move around, go to Afghanistan, come back. They were given the VIP treatment at that time, and thereafter now they are sitting here. They don't have that kind of clout in Afghanistan. So there was something, but unfortunately we didn't do anything about that, and we have been we have been dealing PTI people with very heavy hand. Now, as far as Azam Swati's case is concerned, I think it was a shameful act that he started using such bad words about General Bajwa and Nasir. He should have behaved like a civilized person. This is not. But unfortunately, it so happens that when there is a weak person and he's confronted with a very strong man, and strong man uses his own strength and power of his muscles. The other side only abuse. The other side only can abuse. They can't do much. So that way, I think I put the blame on Supreme Court, where this man has been standing for several days, every day crying for justice. The Supreme Court never listened to him, and they just said one thing, that we have handed over your case to the Human Rights Committee of the Supreme Court. That I think is not enough. So our courts are also responsible for whatever we are seeing on our.
And when the court has given, release orders for Ali Wazir, and still he is unable to get any sort of respite from this, he's still behind the bars. Of course, the onus goes on to the institution and not the civilian government. They do not have that power to let the executive is basically not exercising its power. And that is a, big question mark.
They can exercise, there's no issue. There's no problem.
Let's see now with General Asim if they can.
I'll explain. See, Uzair Baloch, he admitted that he has committed more than 100 murders. Similarly, Raw Anwar, they were involved in about more than 400 extrajudicial killings. Uzair Baloch particularly has remained in the custody of army also. And he was blamed for working for some hostile intelligence agency also. All these things were there. But every day, he is exonerated in one or two cases. And now, perhaps after a few months, he'll be out of the jail. So if the civil government, they want to do something for somebody, they can do. They have been doing. Wherever they have their own corrupt people, wherever this mafia has their own interests, they don't bother about army or anybody else.
But so you mean to say that if they want, they can get Ali Wazir out of the bars,
if they want that. See, they don't have their personal interest in Ali Wazir, so he is languishing. If they had their own personal interests, Abdali Saab or anybody inside, you would have seen Ali Wazir sitting outside only after a week or so.
So you don't blame the institution. You don't blame the institution.
I don't blame.
Okay. So last question to you. What will happen to the smaller political parties? Parties like MQM, parties like, from Southern Punjab, people like Parvez Ilahi, they have always been looking up towards the establishment. They are their products. So, and for any decision for that matter, they always have to take directions. What is going to happen to that?
That is where I think the institution has gone wrong. If we truly believe that we are not going to be in the politics, and we have made sure, or we have made our promise, and we are now going to stick to that promise that we are not going to interfere, then this political engineering will vanish. The smaller parties will try to, then they will have to find out some bigger party where they can get to them as their allies. So that sort of thing will start. See, for example, in case of MQM, General Ziaullah created when they saw that there's a threat developing from PPP, and then when they saw that MQM is now getting out of hand, they started cutting them to size. And now again, there was an effort to put them together because they want to cut this PTI. They want to cut PTI to size. So they wanted that MQM should regain their old glory, and PTI should not be there in sin. But this has not happened. The people are now sticking to their guns. They are supporting Imran Khan, and we have not been able to do. But if we, let's say, exploit the people and start indulging in that kind of political engineering, I think that will be a disaster. Our political structure has gone weak and weaker and weaker only because we have been indulging in political engineering. We have not allowed these political parties to gain that strength which they should have gained with the passage of time. Ultimately, these two political parties, PPP and even JUI, PPP, PMLN, they have become their private limited companies. There are 2-3 families who are running them like their own companies, and all others like Khaja Asif and others, they are their employees.
Okay, sir. So no political engineering by the institution is your expectation that the institution should. And what I must commend now, is whether it's you, whether there are others, that you all now admit the fact that political engineering or meddling in the politics by the institution has not reaped any benefit to the country. In fact, it has weakened the system.
It has weakened the political system. But unfortunately, I can tell you another thing, very important. I have been Director of Military Intelligence. See, these politicians, they want to draw strength from the institution. They keep visiting, they keep begging, they are there always to receive some kind of favor from them. This is too bad. I think the politicians, and then this happens only because most of them, they are either not capable of doing things or not capable of a position which they are holding, and at the same time they are corrupt also. If I personally I have a feeling, if the politicians, they reform themselves,
right,
there is no question of anybody coming near the political system.
So probably your advice to the Chief of Army Staff, General Asim Munir, would be to shut that gate number 4 forever. Seal it.
That is there. I think he will do that. I personally have a feeling, because he is not a person who's too accessible. I have a feeling that he's a very reserved type of person. Talks less, meets less number of people. So that way, I think if he makes an effort to keep the army out of politics, he'll be able to do that.
Thank you so much for your time, Lieutenant General Retired Amjad Shuaib Saab, on the institutions, the transition that is completed, the expectations, and what he expects not only of the institution but also from the political parties. That sums it all. Take care of yourself. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.